You know, it's been a lot of buildup, and pun intended, both emotionally and then also just with the products coming in for this bike. We've been doing this thing for probably 2 months here in the shop. It's been a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation. We knew at the end of this, we were gonna take this thing out and put it to the test, and that was, for me, #1 priority. Build this bike so that it works in the mud, not so that at the end of the year somebody goes, hey, that's a really cool looking ATV, but does it go? We go, this is a really cool ATV, and yes, it does go. I'm not the mud expert here. I mean, I've never raced in the mud before, but I knew that with your experience, I mean, you've been racing how long?
Since about 2005, 2006. Actually, the Can-Am wasn't even, the Outlander wasn't even invented yet when we started racing. We used to race Hondas and Polarises and stuff like that.
When the Outlander Gen 1 came out, this thing was a beast in the mud, and that's exactly why we picked it, because I had no idea what to start with. But you said, hey, a Gen 1 Outlander is pretty much what everybody's going back to. It's still an awesome vehicle. That's what we need to build.
There's nothing that compares to it. You think being an older generation bike, you think it'd be outdated, but guys are lengthening them, they're turboing them, NOS, everything. It's crazy what you can do with these things.
So the event we went to this weekend was the Powassan Smoke N Spurs event. Very small town, but let me tell you, this event is big. The OMR, which is the Ontario Mud Racing Association, was on site, and Graham had been there 2 years ago, was it?
Yeah.
And I'm guessing the event was a lot smaller then.
Yeah, it's crazy how many bikes showed up to this one. I think it was like between 55 and 65 bikes by the time we were all done, signed up.
Yeah, it was huge. And I mean, on site, they've got the full Canadian rodeo stop. They've got bull riding, they've got Bronco stuff, they've got the show and shine for the big highway trucks, which tons of guys show up for that. They've got tractor pulls and kids zone with paintball stuff and zip lines. And I think they told me this year they had pre-registered 450 trailers on site, and they usually get 150 plus on top of that. So you're talking a seriously large crowd here, and it was really cool because the amount of people that showed up for this mud race event was significant. We had to check the front diff because whether or not we've talked about it on the show, it does have a small fracture in the front diff, just a hairline crack, and it drips a little bit of fluid every once in a while. So we had to fill that up and, you know, top it up with gas, make sure that the rad was full of coolant. This thing was fresh, it was ready to go. I think at the point that I start to smell, you know, the VP fuel and the fumes are in the air and the bike fires up, and as soon as you can hear that lumpy cam. I have zero expectation for myself, just as long as I don't put it upside down, hold it wide open, and try not to look like a fool. So event registration started at 9 a.m., which we were there even before then. And it was kind of funny to see how many people were kind of crowding around the truck, and there was people coming over and talking to us. Some people were like, hey, is the bike finished? And it's like, yeah, it's here. You haven't seen all of it on TV yet, but you know, it's ready to go. And it looks like people are maybe signing up over there. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we start in the water.
Oh, you started in the water?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that throws a whole different curve.
So what we do it here is we do timed eliminations. So if you guys happen to both be in the same time bracket, we'll try to have it so that you're not running against one another. That's all, okay? Yeah, we ran 2 qualifying rounds this morning, and then this afternoon we run elimination.
I'm excited. I think it'll be fun. Graham's nervous. I love it. Not that I'm used to this, but for all the years that we did racing stuff, it's just kind of like, this is starting out. I've never done it before, so I'm just gonna have fun, smile, and whatever goes down, goes down. I don't really care. Well, that's right. Yeah, I got nothing to prove, but Graham's, I tell you what, I think we'll have to fire him if he doesn't do well. It'll be all over. He'll be looking for a job on Monday, so it'll be fun. We'll have a good time. Almost there. Graham's gonna teach me a thing or two. Hopefully we don't have to race against each other because we're using the same bike, so I don't know how that'd work, but. So I was pretty stoked. I mean, you looked like you were pretty anxious too.
Oh yeah, I was nervous. Once you get that first run in, and you know how it feels, it's once you know how the bike's gonna react.
Yeah, I'm gonna let him go first. I figure if anything goes wrong, it'll be him on it, not me, and I can blame him. I think that's wisdom. And we get out there and it takes off great, it hits like a ton of bricks, and then what? 2/3 of the way down the pit, right as it just starts to hook up and you're like, whoa, this thing feels real good. All of a sudden it noses over, it starts coughing and stumbling, and we're like, oh no, what is this? And we thought, oh, you know, maybe it was just your run, who knows? And then I go out for my run. and at the exact same point, it blah, 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 you know, stumbles over, falls on its face. You know, my heart sank a little bit because I'm like, what did I do wrong? What did we do wrong? You know, what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
It felt good right up to the point that it let go.
Oh, I just clicked the front wire down.
There you go.
Yeah. The front boot on the coil?
Yeah.
All the mud racing crew, the guys come over and they're like, oh, you know what? So-and-so's bike, Jeremy's bike did this one time, and it turns out it was the coil pack, you know, pushes on it, you can hear it go snap, and it's just like 1/8 of an inch. It wasn't snapped right down.
Hopefully it rips.
It'd be great if that was the problem. We'll see. But we said, let's give this one more run, and you went out and tried it, and
Round two.
Pretty good?
Two. Oh yeah, it feels pretty good. Bit of a cough at the end of the pit, right when it hits some water, so we think that the coils might be arcing.
yeah, you came back afterwards and you were like, this thing works, you know? And right at that point, I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, come on, don't stumble, don't stumble.
Graham got a clean run out of it, so we'll see what happens.
And then when I did my run, same thing, down the track, felt like it hooked up and was pulling like a cat on a screen door. You get that halfway point down the strip, and all of a sudden, that Mr. RPM engine just starts to build, and it hits, and you're like, okay, yeehaw, this thing's working.
I don't know if you're happy with it. I don't think we should. It's working. Let's leave her.
Yeah.
Let's pull it up by the truck because now we're done our runs, right?
Okay, yep.
And then it was like, what, an hour and a half before they told us our times? We were like, oh no, you know, did we do any good? Were we terrible? Were we awful? And so that made me nervous. But then when I saw our times, and that was with only one solid run. I mean, the first run was thrown out the window. Second run, to be 4th and 7th, I thought, well, we got good reaction time, and the bike must be working.
AJ came in on 4th in the qualifying. I was 7th, so I got to step up the game. Got to beat him. So beat him. He just trash talked me. That's all.
We finally made it to the point where they're calling our group up, you know, our name comes across the PA, and you were the first guy up. They called you up first. What were you feeling?
Well, I seen who I was racing against. He's a true veteran, this guy. One of the first guys I've ever seen bring a Can-Am to mud race. And he's been in the game for a long time. His name's Vic Rizzo.
Vic Rizzo holding the fastest time of the day this morning.
I got to beat him on the line. There's no other way I'm going to beat him. So I got up to the line and my heart's just going. That light went green and it was game on. His bike was just so fast.
But I mean, you weren't but a couple bike lengths behind him by the end. I mean, I was pretty impressed because this guy's a veteran and this is our first time running this thing.
Mm-hmm. I knew the next round it was like, I'm all in. How it was set up was you had 2 lanes and to go down twice, so there's no advantage in the lane. You go down and then you switch. And then he was on the fast lane the first run. I had the fast lane next, so I had to make it count. I was just staring down that light. I had the bike bounced on about 1,800 RPM. Was flying down. I think we're pretty close to timing on this one. I could see him. He creeped up ahead of me a little bit, and I could feel me getting a little closer. And all of a sudden, it just darts complete left. I had no idea what happened, and I tried to get it back under control. It was one of those things, you commit yourself to the finish line, and you're going for it at this point. Anything can happen.
When that happened, that made me start to get nervous. Everything was going good. Now I got to go follow this up, you know, and I'm waiting back in kind of the staging area. It pulls up. You're coated. The bike is covered. You know, I get called up. I get the fast lane first, which I'm like, okay, this is all right. I'm lined up, a little bit nervous, but excited at the same time. Light goes green, I hold it wide open, and I am just fighting the bike to the right-hand side. It's just like all over the place. You just tell right away there's something wrong with this thing. And as soon as I get into the fast groove, it's pulling so hard to the left that I can't keep it out of the mud. It's walking across the track just a little bit. I think people knew that there was something wrong because the bike just didn't do what it was supposed to do, and it wasn't going very fast. You know, what happened? Do we have a tire that's bad? Did the diff explode? Something busted up front? What's the deal? turning my hand upside down and starting to pull. Like it's just pulling to the left like crazy. I'm like, what the flip is going on? Kind of bowed out and said, you know what, we'll get it fixed and we'll come back and do this again. But I definitely was disappointed at the end of the day. I mean, I felt just this kind of like, ugh. When it's something as simple as, you know, the bike just has a malfunction, you're like, man, I wish we had got the opportunity to just show what it's got. But I think at the end of the day, we all realized we built something really good. People were pretty impressed, I think, with how it performed.
It's like adding insult to injury. You get covered in mud after your bike breaks. Oh well.
I think it means that we have to go back. We can't leave it at this. Next time, we'll be ready and we'll hold it wide open again. And who knows, maybe that front diff this time is going to explode. But for right now, I'm excited to get out and do it again. It's unfortunate, but
Did you get that?
yeah, that's racing.
He's got the mud bug now.
I think I do.
This segment is just the start for you. Click the subscribe button and become part of the Dirt Trax Nation, where you'll have access to tons of great content from all of the years past of our great stories, trail techs, and test rides.